The story of the Bandidos and the Cossacks in Texas begins long before their paths collided in public headlines. It begins with the landscape itself, a state defined by long stretches of highway, small towns with deep traditions, and a culture that embraces independence, toughness, and loyalty. In this environment, motorcycle clubs didn't just form, they took root. They became communities for people who lived life on their own terms, who valued the road as much as they valued the bonds they built along it. The Bandidos Motorcycle Club emerged first, founded in 1966 in the coastal town of San Leon. Its founder, Donald Chambers, was a Marine veteran who returned from Vietnam with a sense of restlessness. Civilian life felt too quiet, too restrained. He wanted the camaraderie, structure, and adrenaline he'd known in the military, and he found that on two wheels. With a handful of friends, he created something that blended rebellion with brotherhood, discipline with freedom. The club's image, the patch featuring a gun-toting, sombrero-wearing figure, became a symbol of identity, one that members wore with pride everywhere they rode. The Bandidos quickly became more than a small Texas group. They expanded from one chapter to several, then to dozens, and eventually into a global organization with members in multiple countries. Their core values emphasized loyalty, unity, and respect for the club and its traditions. Their members came from blue-collar backgrounds, from military backgrounds, from all walks of life that found meaning in the culture the Bandidos were building. Over time, law enforcement agencies accused the club of being involved in various criminal activities, and the Bandidos became categorized as an outlaw motorcycle gang in official reports. Yet to many members, the club represented brotherhood more than anything else. Accusations from outside didn't define how they saw themselves or their history. 3 years after the Bandidos were born, another club emerged in Texas, the Cossacks Motorcycle Club, founded in Tyler in 1969. The Cossacks chose a name drawn from the fearsome horsemen of Eastern Europe, known for their independence and combat prowess. The symbolism reflected how the club viewed itself. A group of riders loyal to each other, proud of their heritage, and determined to carve their own identity within the motorcycle world. Unlike the Bandidos, whose influence stretched internationally, the Cossack remained more regional, spreading primarily throughout Texas and the surrounding states. Their growth was slow and steady, built on personal relationships, local networks, and the appeal of belonging to a club rooted in Texas traditions. For many years, the Bandidos and Cossacks operated in largely separate spheres. Their members frequented different regions, different bars, different events. They each had their own reputation, their own rituals, their own interpretation of what brotherhood meant. But Texas is not a small place. It is a vast territory with big cities, countless miles of rural road, and a motorcycle culture woven into its identity. As both clubs grew, their paths were bound to intersect. In outlaw biker culture, patches matter, symbols matter. Territory is not always about controlling cities or regions in an official sense. Sometimes it is about identity. The bottom rocker on a biker's cut, especially when it displays a place name like Texas, carries weight. It signals origin, pride, and in some contexts, an implied claim. For decades, the Bandidos had been the dominant club in Texas, and many riders, friends and rivals alike, saw the Texas bottom rocker as associated with their presence. But as the Cossacks expanded, they began wearing patches that included Texas references without seeking approval or recognition from the Bandidos. To the Cossacks, this was a matter of independence. They did not view themselves as subordinate to any club. nor did they believe permission was something they needed. To the bandidos, according to public reports and court filings, this was seen by some members as a challenge, a refusal to acknowledge tradition, hierarchy, or territorial seniority. The tension built slowly. Small clashes occurred in various towns across Texas. Some reported, some whispered about. Fights in parking lots, confrontations during rides, arguments in bars over territory, respect, or patches. Most people outside the biker world never heard about these incidents. But within the culture, they were signals that the landscape was changing, that the peace between clubs was becoming strained. Both clubs valued independence and loyalty. Both clubs valued tradition. Both clubs believed in standing their ground. When these kinds of values collide, conflict becomes less about practical issues and more about identity. No one wants to be seen backing down. No one wants their patch disrespected. And in the biker world, where the patch is sacred, these principles carry enormous weight. Throughout the early 2000s, these simmering disputes continued. Law enforcement reports began referencing rising tensions between the clubs. News articles occasionally mentioned incidents involving members on opposing sides. But most Texans were unaware of how intense the rivalry had become. It wasn't a constant war, more like a series of sparks scattered across the state, each hinting at something larger beneath the surface. The Cossacks continued to grow. They opened more chapters across Texas, especially in areas that overlapped with long-established bandido presence. Riders from both clubs were increasingly visible at bike nights, charity rides, and gatherings. Some interactions were peaceful, others were not. In outlaw biker culture, perception can quickly become reality. Rumors of disrespect, real or imagined, circulate fast. Stories of one club allegedly provoking another spread quickly through the grapevine. And because many biker communities are close-knit, these rumors can influence decisions, escalate tensions, or harden attitudes. At the same time, both clubs tried to maintain their internal unity. Club leadership emphasized their values, their codes, and the importance of representing the patch with dignity. But no leadership can fully prevent conflicts when emotions, territory, and pride are at stake. By 2014, the rivalry was no longer quiet. It had become a topic of conversation within the biker world and among law enforcement agencies tracking gang activity. The stage was being set for something larger, not necessarily planned, not necessarily inevitable, but made possible by the thousands of small factors that had been accumulating for years. The roads of Texas, once simply the backdrop for biker culture, had become a subtle battleground for influence, presence, and identity. The bandidos, with their history and global reach, still saw Texas as their heartland. The Cossacks, with their determination and growth, believed they had earned the right to ride freely without acknowledging anyone's dominance. Each perspective made sense internally. Each perspective clashed with the other. The tension continued to build, quiet but undeniable, until finally it reached a breaking point that would put both clubs on national headlines and change the public conversation around outlaw motorcycle culture in Texas forever. The tension that had been growing for years between the bandidos and the Cossacks was not the kind that erupted suddenly or without warning. It was the result of countless small moments, disagreements on the road, confrontations at bars, rumors that spread through chapters, and unspoken expectations about how riders should behave when representing their patch. By the early months of 2015, many riders sensed that the atmosphere in Texas biker circles had become uneasy. Rival clubs were crossing paths more often, and some members on both sides felt that lines were being tested. In many ways, the situation reflected the complexity of outlaw biker culture itself. Loyalty and independence sit side by side. Respect is both deeply valued and easily perceived as violated. A gesture that one club sees as freedom can be seen by another as provocation. Although most riders simply wanted to enjoy the camaraderie of the open road, the dynamics between larger clubs had a way of shaping local interactions, sometimes in ways individual members did not intend. Across Texas, members of both clubs continued their everyday routines, working jobs, repairing bikes, attending gatherings, hosting charity rides, and spending time with family. This is the part of biker life that rarely makes headlines. The normality, the friendships, the long rides that feel like an escape from daily pressures. Yet beneath that everyday life, the rivalry lingered, creating a scenario where misunderstandings could escalate quickly, especially when amplified by pride and community expectations. As spring approached, discussions began circulating among various clubs about a statewide meeting at a restaurant in Waco. For many riders, this was meant to be a routine gathering where clubs could discuss issues affecting the broader riding community. Meetings like this had happened before. They were not inherently dangerous. But this particular gathering brought together groups whose relationship had grown increasingly complicated. When members of the Bandidos and Cossacks arrived at the same location, events unfolded that would later become the subject of years of investigations, lawsuits, debate, and public scrutiny. The confrontation that occurred at Twin Peaks in May of 2015 was tragic and chaotic, resulting in multiple fatalities and injuries. Despite extensive coverage, the exact sequence of events remains disputed, with differing accounts from witnesses, riders, and authorities. What is clear is that the incident became a defining moment in modern outlaw biker history. In the days that followed, Texas and the rest of the country watched as nearly 200 people were detained, questioned, or arrested. Images of rows of motorcycles lined up behind police tape were broadcast nationwide. Commentators discussed outlaw motorcycle clubs, speculated about motives, and debated whether the response by local authorities had been appropriate. For many people unfamiliar with biker culture, Waco was the first time they became aware of the long-standing tensions between clubs or the nuances of identity within the biker community. The legal aftermath was extensive. Charges were filed, debated, withdrawn, or dismissed in a process that lasted years. Legal experts questioned the scope of the arrests, the strategies of the prosecution, and the complexity of handling such a large, multifaceted case. For individual riders, the event left emotional scars, changed reputations, and altered their lives in profound ways. Some riders insisted they had come for a peaceful meeting. Others avoided public commentary altogether, preferring privacy and distance from the media. In the biker world, the Waco incident became a turning point. It influenced how clubs approached interactions with each other and with the public. It shaped how law enforcement monitored biker gatherings. It also impacted how the general public perceived motorcycle clubs, reinforcing stereotypes for some while sparking curiosity for others. But even with all the attention Waco received, the deeper story is not about a single event. It is about how two clubs developed parallel identities over decades, each rooted in its own sense of tradition, loyalty, and community, and how those identities occasionally collided against the backdrop of Texas biker culture. The rivalry did not begin in Waco, nor did it end there. Instead, the incident highlighted the long-standing tension and raised new questions about how clubs could coexist in the future. In the years that followed, both the Bandidos and the Cossacks continued their activities, but with shifts influenced by the aftermath of 2015. Clubs became more cautious about where they gathered, how they represented themselves, and how they interacted with other groups. Public visibility changed. Some events saw reduced attendance, while others were reorganized to emphasize community engagement and avoid misunderstandings. Many riders emphasized charity work, fundraising, and positive contributions to local communities, reinforcing the message that motorcycle clubs are not monolithic and cannot be defined solely by isolated incidents. Researchers studying biker subcultures noted that outlaw motorcycle clubs often evolve after major conflicts. Internal structures may become more formal, communication strategies shift, and chapters become more attentive to public perception. While the loyalty and symbols remain, clubs adapt to changing landscapes, both legal and cultural. For the Bandidos, whose history spans decades and whose chapters extend globally, the years after Waco involve navigating increased federal scrutiny alongside maintaining their strong internal identity. Public records indicate that some members face charges unrelated to the Waco event, part of long-running investigations into various kinds of criminal activity. Still, individuals within the club often pointed to their charitable events and community involvement as defining aspects of their culture. The Cossacks, though smaller and more regional, also adjusted their structure and activities. Their growth across Texas continued, though with heightened awareness about how their presence was perceived. Many members emphasized that not everyone wearing their patch was involved in conflict or wrongdoing, echoing a sentiment expressed widely across biker communities, that a club is more than the worst actions of a few individuals. Despite occasional reports of isolated confrontations between individuals from both clubs, the state did not see another incident on the scale of Waco. The rivalry persisted, but largely in ways less visible to the general public. Instead of headline-making confrontations, the tension existed more subtly, in the careful organization of rides, in the presence or absence of certain clubs at certain events, in the quiet calculations made by riders who wanted to avoid trouble while still honoring the patch they wore. As time passed, the narrative of these clubs became less focused on active conflict and more on cultural identity. Motorcycle clubs in Texas hold a deep, symbolic meaning, a blend of rebellion, independence, and shared brotherhood. For many riders, the appeal is not danger or conflict, but the sense of belonging, the freedom of the road, and the family-like bonds formed through years of riding together. To understand biker culture fully requires acknowledging that outlaw clubs are not simple. They occupy a place where tradition, loyalty, and lifestyle intersect with history, law enforcement, and public perception. The story of the Bandidos and the Cossacks is therefore not simply about rivalry, but about how two groups grew out of the same soil, developed different identities, and collided in ways neither entirely sought nor fully avoided. Today, Texas remains a landscape shaped by biker culture. You can still find long lines of motorcycles rolling across the hill country on weekends, charity rides supporting veterans or local causes, and independent riders sharing the road with patched club members. The legacy of both the Bandidos and the Cossacks continues, a reminder of how identity, community, and conflict intertwine across decades. As new clubs form and older clubs evolve, the motorcycle world in Texas remains dynamic. It is a world built on steel and asphalt, shaped by history, and never fully understood by those outside it. Each rider, each chapter, and each club contributes to the larger story, a story still unfolding on highways stretching beyond the horizon. In the end, the tale of these two clubs is less about domination and more about the complexity of belonging. Their conflicts, their traditions, and their evolution reveal how deeply identity can shape a community, and how that identity can carry both pride and risk. The open road continues, and with it, the story of Texas biker culture. A story that will always be bigger than any one moment, any one chapter, or any one patch. Subscribe to Shadowline.